Good morning. We will pay attention to adjustments today, and the first adjustment that we will do is accrued expense. The following balance appeared in the trial balance on 30 April for rent expense 20,320. The figure that appears in the trial balance is the actual amount that was recorded during the year every time when rent was paid, the bank was credited, and the rent expense account was debited. Then rent increased with 8% on the 1st of January 2015. The rent for 2 months is due, so you still have to pay the rent for 2 months, and you must take it into account because when you do your financial statements, you must show the total amount for the financial year. If this trial balance is on 30 April 2015, it means that our financial year will be from 1 May 2014 up to 30 April 2015. Okay, so first of all, we have to do a calculation to determine what is the rent per month. Because they tell us that there's an increase of 8% on the 1st of January, we have to take the 8% increase into account. Okay, so if I look at my calculation, the financial year started on the 1st of May 2014. The rent increase was on the 1st of January. So from the 1st of May up to the 31st of December, that is 8 months, we paid the same amount for rent. So say, for instance, we say rent is 8, so for 8 months we paid 8Y. Then on the 1st of January, the rent increased. We are still overdue with 2 months, so we've only paid the rent up to the 28th of February. So for 2 months, we paid the 8 amount, and we also paid for the 2 months the increase of 8%. Now, normally when we do an increase, we will show 8 over 100 times the amount. We don't know what is the amount, so we say the amount is Y. So 8Y, and at the bottom is 100. So it means for the 2 months we paid 2Y plus 2 times 8 gives me 16. 16 divided by 100 will give me 0.16. And that equals the total amount that is in your rent expense account. So the amount that we paid, the 20,320, was for the first 8 months at Y amount, and for 2 months at Y plus 8%. So if we divide that, we see that Y equals 2,000. Now remember, Y is before the increase. So on that 2,000, there was an 8% increase that will give you 160 Rand. So the rent per month is 2,160. The amount that we owe at the end of the year is 2 months times 2,160, so we still have to pay 4,320. I have to adjust my expense account and show that this rent expense must increase with 4,320, so that I will have the total amount in my expense account. Rent is an expense that was not paid in a time, so it means I will credit accrued expense with 4,320. I create a liability to show that we owe this money at the end of the financial year. Then the total amount, the 20,320 plus the 4,320, if we paid everything in, there was no accrued amount, the total amount would have been 24,640. The figure that we take to our profit and loss must always equal the total amount that we have to pay for the year. So if we do this in the journal entries, we will show that we will first of all record rent expense 4,320 to increase the rent to the total amount, and credit accrued expense to create a liability. Accrued expense liability is created at the end of the year, but it's only valid for 1 day. The first day of the next financial year, we have to do a reverse entry. So because accrued expense is on the credit side, if I want to remove it out of this liability account, I have to debit accrued expense on the first day and then credit rent expense with 4,320. In the general journal, I will show that accrued expense is debited and rent expense is credited. So if you remember that accrued expense is a liability, then you know that a liability has a credit balance. So the reverse entry for a liability will always be on the credit side of my expense account. If I look at my rent expense account now, I can see that we owe 4,320 because expenses will always increase on the debit side. The first time that we issue a check now for rent, it will be to cover that expense from the previous year. And only after we paid the 4,320, we will accumulate here on the debit side all the other payments until we find out what is the total amount for the year. So what did we learn today? When all the expenses were not paid at the end of the year, we have to go and create an accrued expense to show that we have a liability, and that liability will be shown in the balance sheet at the end of the financial year to indicate that we still need to pay for certain expenses. And we will increase the expense so that we can determine what is the total expense, because the total expense must be transferred to the profit and loss account to determine the profit for the year. On the first day of the next financial year, you will have to reverse this adjustment because this expense will be paid later on in the year, and you have to show the first day that you still need to pay the amount, but you will reduce your debt and transfer it to the rent expense account on the credit side.